YouTubers, this is Joe from ArtAlienTV, another game of interplanetary I Spy going on here, back to Mars, back to Gale Crater, and we are looking at a Mars skull, perhaps, possibly two, and I'm going to show you a few older ones that have been on my channel for a while now. This particular image, the main one we're looking at today, is from Sol 821, so we're going right back a few years now, on the 821st day of the Mars rover being on Mars. And of course, Mars years are much longer than ours, about almost double the length of ours. Here we have it. Here it is, near the center of the image, upper portion of the image, near the middle. Just there, right. And even from this distance, you can kind of see what I'm getting at here. Now, this was cool. There's also another image from the same set here, which is taken on the same day, and you can see another one here. Now, this one's a bit vague and may not be, but it's very well shaped, like a humanoid skull, and it's a bit odd, and it's a bit small, and it's a bit far away, so you can't really see a great deal of detail with that one. But I'll show you it anyway, because it's in the same area and may be related. But often, with the debris fields that we see in Gale Crater, a lot of the things we see are very unrelated. As this is very low down, and as there was probably a tsunami that washed into the crater and spread debris everywhere, a lot of these things are not related and are probably from quite far afield, in fact, which is why we see so many different things in this area, and why some of them look mechanical and some of them look natural, and it may be a whole mixture of junk and debris, as well as remains of humanoids and creatures and whatever else was living there at the time. Okay, so without further ado, I will show you the folder, and here we have it. I've already done the enhancements to save time. Now, I'll show you this one first, because this is the slightly less clear one, but it kind of looks clearer when you don't do anything to it, almost. I'll zoom in. It's right up here, and you can see what looks like a jawbone here with teeth there. Can you see those teeth? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. It's going a bit closer. Go too close, it gets worse, but you can see what look like teeth, possible eyes sticking out there. Now, it did occur to me that some of these things we may be looking at on the surface that look like skulls may not actually be skulls at all. They may be actually semi-fossilized, encrusted androids, perhaps. A bit like something from Star Wars that may have been walking around. And when you zoom in, it actually doesn't get any clearer, because it's right at the back of the image. This is small. This is probably only a few inches in size. Real small, this one. So that was that one. But when you get in close, I'll show you a clip. I've enlarged it, and I've stuffed it with more pixels to get rid of the blur. I mean, this pixelation effect you get when you zoom in. And you can kind of see like two kind of round things here, that like kind of eyes and teeth. This is unenhanced. I haven't done anything to this. And you've got a jawbone, a jawline coming down here, like the jaw, and the chin here, and a very vague sort of nasal cavity there, sort of thing. Yeah, maybe. And when you enhance it, I haven't done a lot to this at all yet, so I do think this could be, but we'll come back to that later, because that's not the main one we're looking at today, because that isn't very clear. The one I thought was a lot better was this one. And straight away, without doing anything to it, as soon as you zoom in, if it'll let me, you can see that's really quite interesting. And we have what looks like a cheekbone here, and another one here, and a big sort of jaw, really robust, large jaw, and teeth here. Can you see those teeth? I know it's a bit vague, but it's there. And there's just enough pixels in the image, in this particular one, for us to get some detail from it, because if you, obviously the larger the object is, the more pixels there are in the image, and then the more detail you're going to get. In other words, if it's closer or larger, there's more to see, obviously. So what I did, I took a clip, let's just show the clip on its own here, That's just been enlarged. It hasn't been altered in any way apart from size. And you can see this thing here, and you can see what looks like a jaw here, lower jaw, mandible, maxilla here with teeth, and the area above the mouth here is quite long, and there's not much sign of a nasal cavity there at all. Okay, so that's weird, but that's not uncommon with some of the what look like skulls I found on Mars. That's not uncommon. I'll show you more on that in a minute. But some of them do have very large, robust sort of nasal bones, and almost look like they kind of have an exoskeleton. Let me show you the enhancement here. Right, okay, actually I may as well show you it in here. I've already got it up in here because this has got a slightly better resolution. There's that other one. Now I've tried to enhance that a bit more. You can't really see a lot here, but you can see what looks like a jawbone coming down with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6 teeth there, and another 5 or 6 here, but it's pretty vague, and it's, if you get too close to it, it just gets even more blurred. I brightened it up there and colour filtered it. So that doesn't show a lot really, unfortunately, but this one does. And I've done an image comparison there. I'll probably have something like this on the cover, with the raw image on the left and the enhanced clip on the right. I think actually I put this up on one or two Facebook groups recently, probably a couple of weeks ago. But I actually found this way back in February this year, 2017, and I kind of lost it. I had problems with my computer earlier on in the year, and I lost a lot of stuff. Then I've refound it, and then had to do it all again because I lost a few things. And so that kind of got lost and found again. That's why it's taken so long to publish. Here's the little clip. That's just a clip that's been enhanced and then cut out and then put onto there. So that's all I've done with it. And really all I've done here is add quite a lot of contrast, which has made it go very bright. And I tried to darken it down a bit around here because it gets very reflective in this area, just so you can see the skull in better light, because it's a little bit vague, and you've got to push things a bit just to make it show up on screen, because of course what happens with YouTube is when you make a video, the images kind of get a little bit more blurred, and you don't get the sharp image I'm looking at quite. I mean, if you look at the lettering here, to me that looks really sharp, and the edges are nice and sharp on there and around this logo. But when I upload this and then watch it back on YouTube, that won't look as sharp. That would look slightly fuzzy around the edges. So you do lose a little bit of definition with YouTube, unfortunately, even though you're uploading in HD and 60 frames per second and all that kind of thing, and quite a high bit rate and everything else. You do lose definition, so you really do have to exaggerate slightly the contrast and things like that on images, just so that they show up and people can see them on their mobile devices as well. I mean, quite often these things do look better on a mobile device because they have a lot of pixels on the screen, but the screen's smaller, so what it does, it kind of compresses the image down and kind of sharpens it a bit again. So things can look better on a sort of tablet or on a large phone or something, rather than on a full-size laptop or whatever, like I've got here. So there we are. There it is. Quite clear, if you ask me. There isn't really much of a nasal cavity there at all. So if this is a skull, which it may be, or it could well be a carving, but it doesn't look like a carving. Carvings don't generally do that. I mean, people do carve skulls on Earth. There are plenty of examples in art, especially in South and Central America. They've got a bit of a thing about skulls there. I've had a thing about skulls for a long time. I've always been slightly fascinated by them, and I've always collected animal skulls from an early age, as well as fossils and stuff. I was a bit of a fossil hunter when I was a young lad, and used to go with a mate of mine, and we had a sort of special chisel and hammer, and we used to go around hammering bits of rock and stuff. And you do have to look through a hell of a lot before you find something. And the same is true with Mars. For every, say, 1,000 rocks, that you might get one that could be a fragment of something, or a broken part of a technology, or a fragment of bone or something. But occasionally you do get what looks like an entire skull, slightly encrusted in clay, a bit misshapen, a bit damaged, like this one. But I'm guessing this comes out a bit more here, but the way the light's reflecting on here, it kind of makes it look smaller. But if you look at the raw image, it actually comes out a bit further here. So there we are. Very strange. That skull is extremely robust. The actual jawbone here especially, it almost looks mechanical, but it probably isn't. It's just kind of dislocated and broken. You've got this side looks kind of more intact here, and then this looks like it's been fractured and broken or something. Who knows? Who knows? Interesting either way. Now let me quickly show you some of the other ones I've done over the years. I've got about 60 or 70 skulls and bones. Now this one wasn't found by me. This was James Tracy, but I think this was found by this one. Now a lot of you may have seen this already. There is a credit to oh no, this was Eric Collingridge, this one. I come back to this one a lot because this is one of my favourite skulls on Mars, and he did a great job spotting this. I'll just play a little bit of that. Now this one is a little bit more human looking, but it's not quite. And there's a bit vague, but still has eyeballs. Now, a lot of people have said, these are the eyeballs here, how could a skull possibly still have eyeballs if it's millions of years old? Well, it may not be millions of years old. This may only be 100 years old. It may only be a few thousand years old. There's the enhanced image. And you can see teeth. You can even see bits of flesh still where the lips would have been here almost. A very small nasal cavity here. An eyeball here and an eyeball there. And a jawbone coming back, and what look kind of like gills or something. And this is damaged. This one's damaged and has looks like it's smashed in the head here. And you can see it almost what looks like internal brain structure here. Or possibly this could be hair up here. The remains of some hair. These squiggly bits. So I'll play that through a little bit more. Yeah, this one was really got me. And why would they still have eyes? Now, of course, they may have a very different physical makeup to us. The bone may be much more dense. It could be like the Star Child skull that Lloyd Pye was promoting for many years. That they may have a much denser, harder bone than we have, which may last for way longer. Now, and also the conditions on the Mars surface are very conducive to preservation because it's very cold most of the time, and there's very, very little moisture in the air or in the ground, and it kind of freeze dries everything, and things are very well preserved. And this is a good example of it. And the eyes may not even be made of anything. They could be a kind of bony structure like some sea creatures have. They don't necessarily have eyes that are soft and watery like ours, you know. They could be very, very different. They could be more like calcium based or kind of what was it called, cartilage based. They could be made of cartilage or a different type of material, you know. They may not be the same as ours. So you have to bear that in mind when looking at alien stuff like this. It may look similar to us in some ways, some of the things, but there are some quite profound differences. And you've got to kind of take that into account. So that was the Martian alien humanoid skull, Homo aeolus, I called this one, because it's near Aeolus Mons, which is in fact Mount Sharp, In Gale Crater. So there we have it. There's also this one, I published this years back. This is going back right to 2014, and is a Conehead, elongated skull, very, very similar to the ones you might see in Peru, the Paracas skull, or the Paracas skulls, that Brian Forster is a very big promoter of and has done many great videos about and stuff like that. So check out his channel, Brian Forster. He's been on Ancient Aliens as well. more than I have. I was only on it for a couple of episodes. He's been on quite a few. But when the comparison comes up, you'll see exactly what I mean. And this is also very well preserved, and it's kind of leaning on this kind of rocky outcrop here. And this is very large. This is over a foot. I'd say possibly between a foot and 18 inches long, and it's very long, much longer than a human skull. A human skull would come to about here. This is way bigger, and it's even got lip and teeth detail here, nose, eye here, obviously. And when you see the comparison, you'll see it. There we have it. These are a couple of Paracan skulls from Peru. Red hair, this one. Look at the similarities. Very, very similar indeed. You have this shape here, which we got here. The jawbone isn't quite the same. It's kind of, but it could be partially obscured by the ground. Very similar. Look at this detail around the face here. Okay. Now imagine this when it's not fully. Well, what's the word for it? Imagine this skull here, or this one here, with flesh still on it, where it's kind of dried and mummified before all the flesh has been eaten away. That's what this would look like. Okay, so that's what we're looking at. Here's one found in Mexico, another elongated one, very similar again. Now, are these guys from these Paracans from Mars? Perhaps are they the same race? Is it possible that the Martians actually came to visit Earth, and some of them escaped the cataclysm on Mars and settled in various parts of South America, like Peru or Mexico? It has some very profound similarities here in shape. This is one of my theories, of course. No one else has come up with that theory yet, but no doubt other people will copy it, like they usually do with my theories. Having a distinct lack of their own often. So we shall see. But the similarities are uncanny, and it could well be that some of these Martians travelled to Earth and maybe related to them, you know. It's very uncanny. There's also this one. This is a jawbone or something similar, some kind of jawbone of some kind of unknown creature. This is also Gale Crater, of course. This one it hasn't had many views for some reason. This was about a year ago, just over a year ago. I may republish this one at a later date, and because many people wouldn't have seen this. This is cool because it's very clearly got teeth. I don't know what it's from. I couldn't tell you what animal it's from. It could be from a type of animal that we've never seen or never known or even imagined. We don't know. But it looks like a lower jawbone lying on its side with teeth here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe 7. There's one on the end there. 7 or 8 maybe. A bone that's like a kind of joint here where it would have joined on, and that would have been the chin. So these look like molars, okay? Now that would be from a vegetarian creature, not a carnivorous creature. Carnivores obviously would have very pointy teeth for tearing meat, whereas these look kind of like incisors and molars here, like you would have just for eating vegetables and softer things, you know. There we have it. I mean, what else can I say? I can't tell you what it's from. I don't know. It doesn't. I've tried looking up lots and lots of different jawbones, and I couldn't find anything quite like it on Earth. It's from some kind of vegetarian creature, and it's quite small. This jawbone is probably only about between 2 and 5 inches across, probably around 3, I would say. So it's not very large at all. So who knows what that is? I don't think that gets any clearer from there. In fact, it looks kind of better there when you see it smaller. You can see the teeth better. Okay, so I don't know what that one is, but it was interesting. I thought I'd throw it in. Incidentally, you may want to check out my playlist, Alien Skulls and Bones on Mars. This has got well over 60 examples of skulls and bones on the Mars surface, and some of them are very clear, like this one. And there's also this one, which is another video that kind of got ignored a bit. This Mars statue head up close. Now, I don't think this is a statue now. Looking at it, it's way too ugly for one. This kind of looks like an encrusted skull, perhaps. Just here, with a nose, brow ridges, chin here. Very robust, kind of giant-looking features, like you would expect a massive troll kind of giant to have. Really weird. But bear in mind, this was a lake bed, and a lot of this may be clay that's stuck to it and then dried and encrusted onto it. And in fact, if you look carefully, you can see teeth in here. You have a chin, a nose, which is very odd looking. And this resembles more of the skull type seen in the sort of northwestern areas of Mars, where the Opportunity rover is, and it's much more barren. And some of the skulls that have been seen by the Spirit and Opportunity look very robust, in fact, and are very different from the much more humanoid looking ones that we see in Gale Crater. I don't know whether that's significant or not, but these look like they look more like this anyway. This is the only one of this type that I've found in Gale Crater. So we may be looking at a very different species here. I don't know. For sure. When you see the detail, you can see the teeth here. That's the upper maxilla. Now, a lot of this is encrusted in clay and mud, and it's kind of distorted a bit. Let's play that a bit more, actually. Is it going to play it? Yeah, come on. Yeah, I flip it round here just so you can see, but it's odd because the nose is very odd on this. Just there. But it does resemble some that have been found by people in the Spirit rover and Opportunity rover images, but unfortunately a lot of those were quite a long way off. I have been sent some in over the years by people, but the image quality is so terrible that you really can't do anything with it. So I haven't really shown many of them, but they are there, and this is an example of it. And the brow ridge is extraordinary on this thing. What is this? Very odd indeed. I'm still not sure about this one. It could be a carving that's heavily damaged, but to me it looks like a skull that's encrusted and fossilized and has become exposed, but with a very odd shaped nose. But bear in mind, we're looking at an alien planet here. You know, why would they have the same shaped noses as us? Why would they have exactly the same proportions as us? They shouldn't do, really. Some of them may have. There may have been different types of Martians. This guy would have been probably one of the more giant types of Martians, and would have probably stood 7 foot tall with a hugely elongated head. This was off the creature, so it's unrelated. This guy's really quite small. This could even be a female skull. The brow ridges are fairly small. I would expect if a male skull to have bigger brow ridges and more pronounced here. So this could be a female skull. And this is quite small. I would say this is probably only about 3 or 4 inches from here to here. So this is what I would call one of the dwarf skulls of Mars, one of the dwarf variety of Martians. So it may be a juvenile, but I don't think it is. The teeth are in pretty good condition, so possibly it is a juvenile. If they're more worn and broken, then it would be an adult of advanced age, perhaps. But yeah, this could be a juvenile of only sort of 14, 13 or something. But it's very small either way. That is not human sized. This is less than half the size of a human. So that's dwarf size. This thing here is big, way bigger than a human skull. It's almost like one of those skulls you might see on Game of Thrones or something. You know, the giants on Game of Thrones, the sort of robust, almost armoured looking structure to it. Very odd. It's not huge, but this is probably over 1 foot tall. Don't know exactly. It's hard to say with these images. You don't really have a lot of scale reference. You have to kind of work it out from looking at the Gigapans and then measuring things from that, and also using the tracks of the rover and the wheels of the rover, the marks it makes and stuff like that. You can kind of work it out from that, but it's not easy because you don't always have tracks to look at. So there we have it. I'm waffling on a bit here. There are some crazy things in Sol 821 if you want to check it out. I'll put a link to the Gigapan for it as well, so you can look at it on there. Because obviously the Gigapan, you could get a much better idea of scale. These are quite small. Both of these that I showed you today, these new ones, are really quite small. And this is probably also only a few inches in size. So this is similar in size to this one. About 3 or 4 inches, perhaps. This is much bigger. This is very big and robust. Heavy. Very heavy indeed, I would say, this thing. I couldn't tell you how big it is exactly, but it's about a foot, at least 12 inches from here to here. Whereas a human skull would probably only be about 8 or 9 from chin to the top of the head. So there we have it. Some different skulls and bones. Do check out the playlist. There will be a link to this playlist at the end of the video, which you can click on in the cards, and some of my other favourite skull kind of videos as well. So you can check those out. There are many examples of these. I've only picked out a few today to show you, and there are many examples. And the reason why I'm quite confident about this is because I've done many videos about these, and I do have probably around 50 skulls now on my channel. And a lot of them are humanoid looking, but they're not quite the same as us. The proportions are different, the jaw size is different, the teeth configuration is often very different. This one seems to have damaged teeth here, so it's not a juvenile. This is an older specimen. But look at there's no distinct brow ridge there. It's kind of flat here, and there seems to be some damage to it here. You've got a very kind of pronounced bone sticking out here, with quite angular here and here. You've got some remains of eyes almost here. No real nasal cavity to look at there. Probably 2 small holes here, so very different nasal cavity. But some pretty good maxilla detail and jawbone detail down here. Some good shape to it, and it's got a kind of crazy smile, like a lot of skulls seem to have, where you see the jawbone going up to the cheekbone here. Kind of makes a kind of big smile, which is very reminiscent of many skulls you would see on Earth, of course, humanoid skulls, and so it's kind of humanoid. But is it really? It's almost kind of sort of an android sort of robot look to it. I mean, like C-3PO or something. But of course, C-3PO from Star Wars, his facial structure design is based on the human skull. So there you go. And this one was, of course, not very clear. But I may do a couple more enhancements of this one and stick it at the end in a minute for you. But I won't promise too much with that because it's very small and far away. So I thought I'd quickly show you some of the pictures of skulls I've done. I've done loads over the years, but I don't have copies of them all. This is my website, artbristol.com, one of my websites. It's a business I used to run. It doesn't really make any money anymore. But I used to do portraits and things like that and sell them. And here's one of Kurt Cobain. I call it Zombie Cobain. Yeah, basically what he would probably look like now if he came back. Yeah. That was one of my favourites. I enjoyed doing that. This is done in oil. Was it done in oil paint? No, this was done in acrylic paint on a canvas board, and you can actually see the grain of the canvas on that if you look closely and zoom in a bit. But yeah, I mean the human skull, of course, the first flesh to go normally is around the mouth area. Then this would kind of shrink down. And then gradually the eyes would obviously shrivel up, and you know, if you look at mummies, Egyptian mummies, you get a good idea of how these things look, and your face kind of looks shrink wrapped when it's kind of dehydrated, and the moisture's being sucked out of it by the air or by mummification or by salt or whatever, and the face kind of generally shrinks down. But I've always had a fascination with skulls. This is a mask, a skull mask that I designed for a book which never got completed, but But this does give you a good idea of the basic shapes of the human skull and the proportions. If you look at how high the forehead is on a human skull, you can measure from here to here, and it's halfway from here to here, and then halfway again from here to here. And you have these proportions, which are usually spot on with humans anyway, Homo sapiens. And Neanderthals have very similar proportions, but they have much bigger eyebrow ridges here, which really are very robust looking. A bit like that one I showed you a minute ago, the giant looking one. You know, the facial proportions in humans haven't changed for a very long time, millions of years probably. And there are certain rules you go by when you're drawing a skull and when you're illustrating a skull. There are certain measurements you make, which go right back to the ancient Egyptians and the classic art of the Greeks, the ancient Greeks and Romans as well. They knew all about these proportions. There's another skull I did. But yeah, quite large foreheads, human skulls, generally. But of course then you have the Paracas skulls and the Conehead skulls of Central and South America, which are very different indeed. And don't necessarily follow those rules. So that there are quite large variations in these proportions. And it may well be because some of these actually came from Mars, like I suggested, and landed in Central and South America to escape the cataclysm on Mars and thousands of years ago, you know. So there we have it. Is there a connection between Earth and Mars? Is that the reason why there's such a similarity between these specimens here? And I do like the fact they've used a beer can to prop these up with. That's really cool. In the museum, I think that's in near Nazca in Peru, where these were photographed. But yeah, do check out Brian Forster's channel. He's done loads of stuff on these Paracas skulls. They're really interesting. So check out the Alien Skulls and Bones on Mars playlist. There are well over 60 examples on here of skulls and bones, mainly skulls. Some are kind of apes, some are humans, some are animals, some are birds. There are not very many birds. Here's a skull, a Spirit Rover skull there, which is very robust looking, a bit like this one. It has much more similarities to this one. And that is much further north and thousands of miles away from Gale Crater. There's also this one in Gale Crater, which is quite similar to this. Very robust looking, heavily encrusted in mud and clay. That one there, Martian Devil Man. It's very much like this. Let's have a look at that there actually. Yeah, this is much more similar to that robust looking one. And looks very alien indeed, but you have some skull structure here and mouth structure here and an almost non-existent nose. A very tiny nose there. So there are similarities there. But it's very distorted and encrusted in clay, this one, so a lot of people didn't really go with this. But I think it is. And why wouldn't it be? If it's in the bottom of a dried out river or lake bed, then there would be mud and the crap encrusted onto it, and it would have fossilized like that. So that would explain all this other crap around it. The actual skull itself probably only comes to here. It's only this bit. So I'll put a link to this, like I said, at the end, and I'll also put a link to the Mars Skulls top 10 as well, because you may not want to look through all of these, but the top 10 is a bit more easy to look through, and it's just skulls. There's a bird one here, there's that one again. Some of these may just be rocks that look like skulls, but I think most of them are actually skulls and bones, and there are loads and loads of examples. Some of them very clear, like the Mars femur bone that was very big in the press a couple of years ago. That was huge. That was kind of a viral thing back then. So there are plenty of more examples here. And some of these are very alien looking, and many of them look like primates, like monkeys and great apes, like chimpanzees and stuff like that. And some of them look very human. But there are some real dissimilarities as well as similarities, mainly being in the nasal area, and there's weird structures here behind the jaw which kind of look like gills. So are we looking at an aquatic, semi-aquatic kind of humanoid here? Who knows? Perhaps those gills are something to do with the different atmospheric conditions on Mars, if they are gills. These are pretty convincing when you look at them properly. That to me is pretty convincing. That's one of the best finds of this type in the last couple of years, I would say. Other people have found some great examples, but this one is up there, I would say, with some of those. It's pretty convincing. So thank you for watching, everybody. Image clips coming up in a few seconds. Happy Christmas and Happy New Year to you all. If you don't celebrate Christmas or New Year, then Happy New Year and Happy Christmas anyway. You don't have to celebrate it, of course. Season's greetings is probably more appropriate these days, who knows. So thank you for watching. Please give the thumbs up and share on social media.